And you'll just keep going, won't you? Watching the stars, warming your hands on the campfire, dancing, eating, making fucking love all night. All of it, all of it! That's my reward for everything I suffered. That's why I survived 10 years of torment. The fighting, the clawing, the loneliness, the fucking loneliness. All of it so I could rot. Because the person I trusted the most gave me away to the devil.
Hey guys, it's DVD Gamer Girl here. Welcome back to my channel. So today I have a video that was requested by one of you guys, and it's sorting the Baldur's Gate companions by their 4F trauma response. So these trauma responses are basically 4 survival strategies that people develop when they're faced with trauma, especially in childhood. So they're ways that their nervous system learns to protect themselves in threatening or unsafe environments. The 4 responses are fight, fawn, flight, and freeze. And I'll go through each of these and kind of give a quick overview of what each of them mean before we get started with actually sorting them. So fight, the core reaction is basically confronting danger head on, like not, avoiding it in any way, but actually responding to it aggressively. So it looks like anger, control, aggression, setting hard boundaries, trying to dominate or win. So you're essentially fighting back. The logic is if I fight back, I won't be hurt again. And some examples are people who become defensive quickly or react strongly to perceived criticism. So basically your immediate response is to kind of push back on it rather than anything else. Flight, the core reaction is escaping or avoiding the danger, so running away from it, being avoidant of it, and it looks like keeping yourself busy, perfectionism, overworking, anxiety, constantly running from your feelings or problems, so you basically don't want to confront the feelings head on whatsoever. The logic is if I stay ahead or run away, I'll be safe. And this is someone who avoids conflict or fills their schedule to not sit with emotions. So just constantly distracting yourself, constantly avoiding difficult topics, basically an avoidant type of response. 3, we have freeze, which the core reaction is shutting down and disconnecting. So you're basically just, turning everything off. You're not running away, you're not fighting it, you're just trying to disassociate yourself completely from it. Numbness, inaction, feeling stuck, zoning out, seems like you're not even paying attention to it, basically. Survival logic is if I play dead, maybe the danger will pass. And an example is someone who goes blank during arguments, can't make decisions, or procrastinates heavily. So you're kind of stuck in this period of limbo, essentially, where you're not fighting it or running away from it. Fawn, the core reaction is people pleasing to prevent harm. So you are basically trying to charm or, manipulate your way through the situation to kind of get what you need. So it looks like appeasing others, self-sacrifice, codependency, difficulty saying no, trying to keep everyone happy. The logic is if I keep them happy, they won't hurt me. So someone who prioritizes others' needs so much that they lose track of their own. So it's kind of, trying to navigate your way through a situation by appealing to others to prevent harm to yourself. Okay, so given those trauma responses, now I want to sort the Baldur's Gate companions. So let's start with Astarion. I feel like with Astarion, he's a mix of fight and fawn very heavily. Fight is definitely because from the beginning of the game, it's very clear that he wants to go after Khazad-dûr and get his revenge for all the years of abuse that he suffered under Khazad-dûr. Though, you don't really make the decision till the end of if you want to ascend, like if Astarion wants to ascend or if he wants to just kill Khazad-dûr and not ascend. Regardless, he wants to get his revenge on Khazad-dûr, and in either ending, Astarion has a huge release of emotion when he ultimately defeats Khazad-dûr. So if he was not confrontational, like obviously you wouldn't even have that quest necessarily. So fight is definitely very, very relevant for Astarion's trauma response. And also Fawn, because he's very used to kind of charming his way through situations. And even with Tav in the beginning, when he's attracted to or you start romance with him, initially it's very physical, and he is low-key kind of using you to help him get to Cazador. Later that can develop into real actual love, and he's not really using you anymore. But Astarion has a really charming, people-pleasing way about him, and he's kind of used to using sex to get what he wants. So that is also obviously a trauma response, and that's kind of been built into him underneath all his years of Cazador's abuse. So I'm going to put Astarion in both fight and fawn. Next, let's talk about Shadowheart. I feel like Shadowheart's kind of an interesting mix between fight and freeze. Though her freeze response isn't necessarily a self-imposed response, because rather it's put upon her by Shar by wiping out her memories kind of to keep her obedient. I feel like this freeze response is pretty much forced upon her because it detaches her from the trauma. Like, it makes her not have a lot of context of the history of what she's gone through, which in turn makes Shadowheart kind of have her walls up, not really necessarily do a lot of self-introspection, and generally kind of become like avoidant or blanked out or detached from her traumatic past. So I'll definitely put her in freeze because of that. But in addition to freeze, I also want to put her under fight, because as you go throughout the game and, you know, she kind of discovers herself more and she starts to gain some of her memories back, etc., she is definitely not the type to run away from difficult situations or people please her way through difficult situations. Her first instinct is always to fight back. And if you do go down the path where you decide to save Nightsong, etc., Shadowheart actively acts against Shar. And even if you go down the path where she aligns with Shar and goes down the Dark Justiciar route, she's very gung-ho on fight, like a fight type of response to any traumatic or confrontational situations. So I'm definitely putting her in there. Next, let's talk about Karlach. Karlach definitely has a lot of fight in her. Like, when you first meet her, she wants to go and basically beat up the paladins. Like, she has a lot of rage against them. She wants to kill Gortash. She has a lot of rage against him for all the trauma that he's put her through. She wants to fight Zariel. Like, in the end, if you go to Avernus with her, she always wants to fight back against her abusers and the people that have hurt her before. And she's very, very gung-ho on that. I was also debating about putting Karlach in Fawn, because she is super kind of self-sacrificing and always looking for companionship and trying to keep everyone happy. But I don't really see that as a trauma response per se. It's more of her personality. I think in response to trauma, she always gets fired up. She has a lot of anger in her, and her primary and only response really is fight, from what I can see. Let me know if you disagree on that. Next, let's talk about Gale. Gale definitely falls into the category of Fawn as his trauma response, because his whole quest line and all his past with Mystra is basically all centered around his need for approval and his need to prove himself. I mean, the reason he's in the situation with the Netherese orb in the first place is his kind of overreaching to try to prove himself. And Mystra giving him a way out as destroying his orb to kill the Absolute and save everyone. Basically, he sees that as a potential redemption arc for himself, and he wants to please her. He wants to prove himself. He wants to apologize by kind of carrying out what she's asking of him, even though that's very self-sacrificing. And just in general with Tav, he needs a lot of reassurance, because I felt like in his relationship with Mystra, he always felt lesser than, he didn't feel good enough. So this constant need for approval definitely stems as a trauma response from his unbalanced power dynamic in his relationship with Mystra in the past. Next, let's talk about Wyll. I feel like Wyll's primary one is definitely Fawn. Because he cares a lot about people's opinions of him. He's very, very obsessed with kind of appearing as a hero and doing the morally correct thing. He's self-sacrificing that he took Mizora's deal in order to save his people. He's always heavily seeking his father's approval, etc. So this, very self-sacrificing, charming his way through situations and trying to kind of sacrifice his own needs for the benefit of other people to get through difficult life events is definitely very, very Fawn. I will also partially put him in fight because his first reaction to any, injustice that he sees or any moral grayness or any wrong moral choices is to fight back against it. Like, he always wants to basically go and fight and do the right thing. So he definitely has that drive in him. He doesn't run away from difficult situations or disassociate himself from them in any way. He always goes in gung-ho with his moral code to actually fight for what he wants. Now let's talk about Halsin. I would definitely put Halsin in fight because when he blames himself for the shadow curse taking over the lands, he doesn't try to run away from it or, not take accountability for it. He blames himself even though it's not really his fault per se, and he wants to stay and fix his mistakes. So I feel like that trauma, that survivor's guilt, basically instilled a sense of fight in him. I'm a little bit torn on if I want to put him in Fawn because I do feel like he thinks about others' needs before himself. So I think I will actually go ahead and put Halsin in Fawn as well, just because of his people-pleasing and self-sacrificing responses to the shadow curse. When he goes to save Thaniel, he risks himself in doing that. So he's literally always putting other people above himself in traumatic situations. So fight and Fawn are definitely really good for Halsin, I feel. Next, let's talk about Minthara. I feel like Minthara is a very clear fight trauma response. She was raised in a cult essentially where cruelty and domination was equivalent to survival, and that really has a big impact on her worldview. And that's why she is so obsessed with control and basically taking her power back. She's interested in domination. Like, she's one of the few characters where even when you get to the end of the game, she wants to take control of the absolute. And it's because she's learned that aggression is the only means of survival. And that's why she's also very cold and she's very sharp-witted. She is completely aware of her trauma, but it has shaped her worldview in a way that she feels like she needs to be aggressive in order to get ahead in the world. If you romance her, you will see that she has some soft, vulnerable moments, but I mean, overall, her trauma response is definitely fight. Okay, next let's talk about Lae'zel. Lae'zel, I would also say, is purely fight. The way that she's always grown up is hyper aggressive. Strength, aggression, and loyalty to Blackith are basically like the only values that she knows. Whenever she is threatened in any way, she's always very aggressive. She's lashing out. She has really strong words. She's always trying to assert her dominance. Even in the romance with her, you have this, fight to whoever wins dominance, essentially, which is really interesting. So no matter what kind of trauma she goes through, as she is one of the youngest companions in the game, so both surprisingly and unsurprisingly, her first instinct is obviously to lash out. She definitely does not run away. She doesn't avoid it, and she is very much not people-pleasing. Like, she will tell it to you like it is, whether you like it or not. So I would definitely put her in fight and fight only. Next, let's talk about Jaheira. I mean, Jaheira's primary one is definitely fight because she's a very strong leader. Whenever she comes across something that she is, unsure of or guarded about, her first instinct is to kind of fight against it and try to eliminate the threat. As when you first run into her in Last Light Inn and she's very skeptical of you, her first instinct is to fight you, essentially, unless you convince her otherwise. But that being said, I will also put Jaheira in flight because I do feel like she is rather avoidant and evasive of her problems. Not that she ignores them like Freeze, but that she actively runs away from them. So for example, when I was rating the emotional maturity of these Baldur's Gate companions, I had put Jaheira as very emotionally mature. But what a lot of you guys pointed out is that she is very avoidant with her own family. Like, she doesn't really act like a mother towards her kids. She acts more of like very rigid and, you know, very regimented type of approach to her family, and she doesn't really show them love. So she is very much an avoidant when it comes to her kids, and I feel like that is a trauma response, and she's unable to kind of experience like this emotional intimacy, etc., with family members. And she throws herself into duty to kind of avoid some of those more personal obligations. So I do find that to be a trauma response, though I don't know very much about the history of Jaheira's lore. Just based on how she does treat her personal family obligations, I feel like she definitely has some flight in there. If you know more of Jaheira's lore, please let me know. I'd be very interested to know more about her. Okay, next let's talk about Minsc. I'm also going to put Minsc in fight because I feel like he's very straightforward. He has a very good sense of morals, and he is always willing to do the right thing, and he never avoids problems. He never blinks out. He's not necessarily very people-pleasing or manipulative, charming, etc. Like, he is very, very straightforward of a person. He seems to always be gung-ho to fight back against whatever his problems are. He's not avoidant whatsoever. So that was very interesting how that turned out. I feel like a lot of people, pretty much everybody is under fight except for Gale, and they have a couple of other trauma responses mixed in too. I think this is really interesting. I didn't really see this chart being so unbalanced, but anyways, let me know what you guys think of the trauma responses. And any other video ideas that you have. I would love to research things and do them just like I researched this one. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.